Maine is home to 5 units of the National Park System. Its crown jewel is, of course, Acadia, which many of you will probably be familiar with, but Maine is also home to 2 of the newest units of the National Park System, as well as a park unit unlike any other, literally. In this video, we're covering them all, diving deep into the Pine Tree State's small but mighty collection of national park sites. First, we'll start with Acadia. I'm not going to bury it all the way at the end of the video and tease you, but you better watch the end if I do this for you. Acadia is, of course, Maine's flagship national park site, but it's also one of America's flagship national park sites as well. It saw just over 4 million visitors last year, 7th most of any national park in the country. It's busy because it's beautiful. Acadia protects a classic example of New England's rocky coastline, where the rugged Appalachian Mountains drop right into the ocean, juxtaposing rocky peaks against the sweeping views and vistas of the seemingly endless Atlantic Ocean. Cadillac Mountain, the highest mountain on the eastern seaboard, is famous as the first place on the US East Coast to see the sunrise. Acadia is also very historic as well, though, and it was a park of firsts. It was the first national park created east of the Mississippi River, the first national park to be created entirely out of private land, and the first national park to be created entirely from donated land. Basically, to sum it up, Mount Desert Island, where the majority of the park is located, used to be home to a bunch of rich people houses. Think Ford, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie, like serious wealth. But then a couple of people, namely George Dorr and Charles Eliot, thought that it should become a park instead. And obviously, I'm cutting out a lot of the story here. This is not one of those videos, but eventually they gathered up enough land to be donated and the park is created. However, at first, it was actually called Sieur de Monts National Monument. That was in 1916. Then 3 years later, it became Lafayette National Park. And 10 years after that, in 1929, it finally became Acadia. Most of the park lies on Mount Desert Island, but there are also portions of the park on Isle of Howe and the tip of the Scoodic Peninsula and some various minor islands off the coast. Next, Maine has 2 relatively new national park sites. Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument was protected in 2016 by Barack Obama under the Antiquities Act, but like Acadia, this one was made up entirely of donated land as well, the land having been given by Roxanne Quimby, the founder of Burt's Bees. This park, as its name implies, is all about the woods and waters of Maine. The woods are the Maine woods, the famous forest for which the state is well known. The waters, in this case, are part of the Penobscot River system, one of the biggest and most important drainages in the state. These woods and waters are the traditional homelands of the Wabanaki peoples, who were heavily involved in this park's creation. Speaking of which, this park was pretty controversial when it was first created. Maine traditionally has relied on its forest products for its economy, and people worried that a monument designation here would take a lot of that away, but the park has basically done a 180 in terms of public opinion. People love it now. It just got a whole brand new visitor center. Not to be outdone with new NPS units though, Maine then got its and America's newest national park site, at least at the time I'm recording this, created late in 2024 at the end of the Biden administration, the Frances Perkins National Monument. This park protects the former homestead of Frances Perkins, the first woman to be part of a presidential cabinet. She was the Secretary of Labor under FDR and was known as the woman behind the New Deal. She championed many labor reforms, including better safety standards, Social Security, and shorter work weeks. Like I said, this park is still brand new, so there's a lot of work still to be done to accommodate visitors, but for now, you can visit the grounds, and according to the NPS website, the historic house is scheduled to be open summer 2025 for visitors, which is now. So that seems imminent. Depending on maybe when you're watching this, that already might be available to you soon. Also, the Appalachian National Scenic Trail ends in Maine at Baxter State Park, or starts depending on which direction you hike. It doesn't really matter. One of the termini is in Maine. The Appalachian Trail is, of course, super duper famous. You've probably heard of it, but maybe you just didn't know. It was actually an official part of the national park system. But yeah, Maine has a special segment of the trail where it ends or begins. You choose. All right, and we'll end with one of the most unique national park sites in the entire country. Maine is home to the St. Croix Island International Historic Site. Yes, you heard that correctly. An international historic site, the only one of its kind in the entire national park system. We've got tons of national historic sites in the NPS, but only one international historic site, and it's in Maine, in Canada. Well, yeah, I mean, technically St. Croix Island is on the US side of the border, right in the middle of the St. Croix River, but the island and this international historic site is jointly administered between the National Park Service and Parks Canada. The park interprets the history of one of the earliest attempts at French settlement in North America all the way back in 1604. Fun fact though, you can't visit the island. You can't visit St. Croix Island. It's off limits to protect the historic sites that are there. Both the National Park Service and Parks Canada do maintain viewing areas though and interpretive materials on their respective sides of the river. And that's where the US Visitor Center is as well, like on the US side. So that's how you ultimately just like end up being able to visit this park, even though you can't go to the actual literal St. Croix Island. All right. That was a short one. Those are the 5 NPS sites in Maine, one of America's flagship parks, the end/beginning of America's most famous trail, some of America's newest national park sites, and one of the most unusual. It may not have that many of them, but Maine really packs in the variety to all of its NPS sites. Let me know in the comments how many of these you've been to and which one was your favorite. As always, I will direct you to my Patreon for direct support. I run an incredibly niche channel here at National Park Diaries, and I really do rely on the support of my community to help keep this whole thing going. I have some great options over there, including a Discord for as little as $20 per year. So do check that out if you're interested in supporting me further, and other than that, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.